Okay, we should be starting right now. Let's see. Alexander's picture is there, but I can't get his audio. We can see you, Alexander, but no audio.
I can't see him.
I can barely see him. He's trying to get on. All right, I think we're live. Can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, let me know. If you can see me, let me know in the chat. All right, Valley S says, there you are. Okay, Alexander just sitting in one of the boxes. He's there, but we can't hear him. You won't be able to see him, Peter. I can see him trying to get on.
Poor guy.
Okay, can you guys hear this stream? Let me know in the chat. Valley S says she can see me, she can hear me. All right, Nigel says hello. Okay, we are on. Guys, Hangouts has been discontinued, so we're using Zoom. And, well, it's a new streaming software for us. But Peter, how you doing, Peter?
Well, I'm on vacation, but the news flow demanded that I come out of temporary retirement, and I'm here in now in a Moscow that just had a terrible storm. It's really quite relaxing, but the news flow isn't, as we will talk about.
Yeah, well, Saturday afternoon for us, Saturday morning in the U.S. What a story to break, huh?
Well, introduce it for us, okay? Break it down. What do we know?
All right.
What do we know?
Let's get to it. Let me read you some tweets, Peter, as to what's going on, and we'll take it from there. All right. From Ted Mann from the Wall Street Journal, even the time of day in this story is shocking. The first check-in on a prisoner who had already attempted suicide once was not until 7:30 a.m. ? Peter. From Quote the Raven. So Epstein failed to commit suicide the first time, is then placed specifically on suicide watch, then successfully commits suicide. Right.
We're told. We're told.
Wilt Chamberlain, guess the guards just happened to be looking away from the CCTV for an hour or so.
Yeah. Drinking that hot coffee. Yeah.
From Neon Taster, this is the most suspicious prison death since Lee Harvey Oswald.
Good point. Interesting point.
Yeah. From Robbie Starbuck, Jeffrey Epstein's victims deserve to see him found guilty in a court of law and deserved for this case to be used as leverage to get justice against other powerful abusers who worked within him to sexually assault minors. Peter, a couple of tweets there. What do you think? What are your views?
I'm not going to echo what a lot of people have said here so far in these tweets. I mean, he was on suicide watch and he committed suicide. What happened? And it was after that 2,000-page sealed indictment was, parts of it released to the public. I mean, that's an interesting dot to connect. I mean, he was on suicide watch. He commits suicide. Really, how? I'd like to know how. He died in a public prison. Taxpayers pay for it. We have a right to know what happened. But I mean, let's put this all in perspective, everybody. It is the least surprising thing that we could possibly talk about at the moment. It crossed all of our minds. Would he ever stand trial? Now, we're going to be very, very responsible, as we always are in these podcasts. So I'm not going to mention names or anything. It would be pointless at this juncture. But first of all, is it him, and how did he commit suicide? And was he helped? Was he allowed? These are germane, valid questions everyone should have, because a lot is at stake here. And just as when the state was getting its case together, which looked pretty powerful, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I understood, it was pretty powerful, and a number of people coming forward. So, and then this happened. So it shuts this case is closed when it was only getting started. You always have to ask the simple question: who does this benefit? Okay, so it's the least surprising piece of news to come our way at this late in the afternoon Moscow time. I can tell you that. Okay,
who does it benefit, Peter? Who does it benefit?
Well, it benefits the people that allegedly committed crimes or were accessories. I mean, this is one of the last time we talked about this. I mentioned this. The only and your last appearance on Crosstalk. This didn't happen in a vacuum. Okay, there were a lot of people were witnesses to all of this. All right, so this case needed to go forward to find out exactly what happened. Very serious allegations have been made, or were made, because Epstein is deceased now. So, I mean, it certainly benefits people that could have gotten themselves ensnarled with it, and people that were in league with Epstein committing these atrocious acts, allegedly. I have to keep saying that. We're very careful here, okay? We're very careful. But there's a lot of very high-profile people that their names have been bandied about, and you know, you're innocent until proven guilty. I would like to know if these allegations are true, because if they are true, then it is an amazing indictment on some very powerful people in the world. We have a right to know, and obviously, victims have a right to know what happened here, because they're not going to get justice. But the elites are very rarely held account. Again. So no one should be surprised by this. We should be all outraged by it, disappointed. The criminal justice system failed again when it comes to powerful people. Failed again. How did he commit suicide on suicide watch? This is nothing less than a dereliction of duty. Or something else happened. And if something else happened, what was it? Fair questions to ask.
Of course, you have a lot of people on Twitter who are saying he didn't even commit suicide. He's somewhere on a plane now.
I've parsed
what they're saying on Twitter, so I'm not going to.
I have parsed my words so far very, very carefully. Is he in fact dead? Will we be allowed to see forensic evidence? Because I said to you, I interrupted you. We're told. It has been said. Okay. I mean, given what's been going on in the news, you know, gas attacks in Syria, the Skripals, all this stuff, I don't believe it. Okay. No one's given evidence for these things. Russia is violating the INF Treaty. We were never given any evidence. Okay. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm a total skeptic.
Alexander has joined us. I'm not sure. Can you hear us, Alexander? We can't hear you. We can see you. I think you can hear us, but we can't hear you. So just work on your speaker, but we can see you. Don't go anywhere. Don't cut out your video. Don't do anything, because I know you can hear us and I can see you. And I think people in the chat, I know, can see you as well.
But I can't.
That's right. You'll be able to see him, Peter, when he speaks. But right now, your microphone, Alexander. So on the bottom left of Zoom, there should be an arrow which lets you set your mic. All right. Anyway, welcome everybody to the chat. We're using Zoom here to get this live chat because Hangouts has been discontinued. Peter, this is the worst possible outcome, is it not? I mean, this is the worst possible outcome.
But it was the most expected outcome. I've been saying this. Okay, the worst possible outcome, but the one that I expected. All right, for some reason, somehow, this judicial process would not come to fruition, come to an end, come to some kind of conclusion, come to some kind of closure, because it never will now. It never will. Okay, obviously,
we're never going to
obviously the Justice Department, and I think I wish Alexander Makiris could speak out about this. And you and I have talked about this numerous times. You go for the main target, and when you're going for the main target, when you feel like you have a very solid case, that gets his orbit nervous to start spilling the beans. Okay, now. Are they going to because they obviously know that there were people in his orbit that had there's highly likely that they knew what he was doing. Are they going to go after them now? Because if you look at it from a strategic point of view, you tell, well, we have names and we have this and that, and then his orbit starts getting really nervous, and then people turn on each other and people cutting a deal. We've already talked about this many times. Will the Justice Department pursue those individuals? That's an open question. And it's the weekend. Who's working at DOJ now? Okay. Like, who's working at the DA now? I mean, I'm sorry. Okay. This is
Killed
the
himself
worst possible outcome, but the most likely one too.
on a Saturday morning, Peter. Supposedly 7
right.
p.m. on a Saturday.
That's right.
On a Saturday. And now the question that I have for you, Peter, on all of this, and we touched upon this before we went live, we were talking. Anything they say from this point on, anything, no one's going to believe it.
Why shouldn't we?
Yeah. Anything.
How did he commit suicide on Suicide Watch? You need to explain to me that first. I don't care what any other question is. I need that one answered first and now. Because you can't move this conversation further without knowing that. Because how can you explain to a reasonable person that, what did they do? They leave shoelaces on his sneakers? I don't think he should have shoelaces. Did he have a belt? Did he have a razor? What? Did he smash his head into the wall? I mean, what?
Alexander, we can hear you.
I can hear Catherine.
I hear Catherine and I hear Alexander.
Okay. We've been struggling with this for some time. First of all, can I say I've been listening to this discussion.
It's the resurrection. He's here.
Yeah. It's about half an hour we've been working, struggling with this thing. But anyway, here I am. I've been listening to Peter.
I hand over the baton to Alexander McKirris. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, a few things to say.
Before you get started, Alexander, before you get started, everyone in the chat, I want everyone in the chat, just let me know if you can see and hear Alexander fine. And if you can, just off a quick message, Alexander, go ahead.
Well, first of all, wonderful to be on the program, finally. And apologies to everybody for, as I said, the struggle. This is a new system, so we've got teething problems, but I think they're sorted. Just to say a few things. First of all, Peter's absolutely right. I mean, we do need to know how it came about that this death happened. I say this death because I have heard nothing so far to suggest that it wasn't a suicide. And suicide is a very typical response by people in this kind of situation. But clearly, there's been a total breakdown in the suicide watch, the protection that a person like this ought to be under. The second thing to say is, I don't think this is going to be the end of this investigation, because of course we must understand that when we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, we are not talking about one individual. We're talking about an organization involving a large number of people who were involved in these activities. I mean, all sorts of names have been bandied around. I want to be very careful. I'm not going to name any names, though we have actually done videos about this, because I'm not in the business of pointing fingers at people who haven't yet been charged. But I would be extremely surprised indeed if this is going to be the end of the investigation. It might even be the moment when the investigation starts to take off, because obviously this is going to provoke lots of questions, lots of anger about the fact that he died in the way that Peter said. And of course, we've had this avalanche of papers that are now pouring out. There was a big release of information yesterday. Again, all kinds of people are being implicated. And in some ways, getting past Epstein himself, and it's important to say that Epstein had a strong technical defense based on the double jeopardy rule, which might have complicated the investigation. Getting past this obstacle of Epstein himself might actually make it easier to drill into the facts and find out what was happening. So let's not throw up our hands and say it's all over. It may not be. But having said all of that, firstly, it's very bad that he died in the way that he did, and grossly negligent, and that's putting it at its most favorable. I mean,
charitable.
I mean, there might be all kinds. I know there are all kinds of theories circulating around, but that's all I'm going to say about that at the moment. And the second thing is, and I'm afraid here I do agree with Peter, there are going to be all sorts of people, I suspect, all sorts of important people, who are not going to be sorry that Epstein is dead. because, of course, one of the things that might have happened if he was prosecuted and put before a court is that he might have sought to mitigate his offence by spreading the responsibility around. It's the kind of thing that people in his situation do. And I can imagine all sorts of people
that's exactly what the Justice Department would want him to do.
Exactly. And I mean, you made the point, Peter, and you were absolutely right to make it spot on. And I mean, people in the United States and people in Britain, there were reports in a British newspaper this morning about an important British individual who was being accused of fondling the breasts of a woman at one of Epstein's events. I should stress he vigorously denies it, and that's why I'm not naming him. But it was in the British media today. And those sort of people, and maybe not that person specifically, I'm not making allegations against anybody, but there are all kinds of people, I suspect, who were involved in this sort of thing, and they're going to be very relieved to hear that he's now dead.
Alexander, real quick, the documents that were leaked the other day.
No, they were released. They weren't leaked. They weren't leaked.
I mean, they were disseminated. They don't implicate Trump. They don't implicate Clinton.
No.
The people that they do implicate are who? I believe Dershowitz is one. I believe Bill Richardson is another, who was the former governor of New Mexico.
Yes.
And I believe Prince Andrew was another. I think those were the three key people that those documents single out. And that was by a Miss, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing her last name right, Miss Jeffrey. Or
Yes. This is one of the people who was abused. I don't think there's any question that she was abused, grossly abused. As a result of the Epstein, and I'm going to say the network, the organization, the kind of activities that they got up to. And by the way, she's been somebody who's been bringing all sorts of claims against Epstein for some time. So we are looking at a long trail of documents here. But this is one person, one abused person. There are lots of them. And as I said, we are going to, if this investigation is pursued properly, I think we could be looking at months, perhaps even years of people being questioned until all the tangled.
The interesting question will be here now is that we are told, again, we have to be very careful with our language. We are told that there are a large number of potential abused victims here. Will they be more likely or less likely to want to have their story told now? That's something that's thrown into the mix right now. We don't really know.
We don't.
I mean, I think one of the things, and Alexander, Christopher, and I touched on it as you were trying to make your resurrection in return to the internet. This is still another serious blow to public confidence in the justice system and in the media. All right. I mean, there were potentially, allegedly, and common sense dictates. I mean, with this kind of behavior on the scale of Epstein's behavior, there were a lot of people that had to have known something or had an inkling or actually knew flat out what was going on. And will they be held account, at least as witnesses? I mean, the Justice Department, at least in the United States, can give immunity very easily for information, okay? And you can build that case here. But with Epstein allegedly gone, I keep saying it. I mean, did he really die? I don't know. I mean, were there weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? Okay, I'm sorry to be mentioning these things, but as someone that works in the media, I think it's important to say, we have to be vigilant right here. Are we being fed this weird narrative that, as Alexander McCurse was trying to get on? I mean, Alexander Christopher and I agreed that this was the worst possible outcome, but the most likely outcome at the same time. Okay, yes. This is this is a really what's the term? A perfect storm, as they call it here.
Absolutely.
So we're all kind of left wondering right now. Again, I'm going to maybe say it. I've said it a couple times already. And I'll say it again. How did someone die on suicide watch? How did they commit suicide? I mean, come on, that's the most simple question. And of course, it's early days. It's Saturday. I did a quick check of the news. I mean, everyone's basically reproducing the same story. Okay, so there's not much, and there's no meat on the bones yet.
More to the point, Peter, how did Jeffrey Epstein die on suicide watch? This is not any accused person. This is somebody who has been in the news, in the media for weeks, who is involved in one of the biggest crime investigations in US history, who is known to be involved in this huge network of activities going back decades, and who, as we said already, has had a history of attempted
and he was convicted. He was convicted. Okay.
You would have thought that Epstein, of all people, would be somebody that they would be taking special precautions to make sure that he didn't commit suicide.
Or just the opposite. Just the opposite. Okay. He was a person that so many people would just want to go away.
Exactly. But in any event, you are absolutely correct. This is a disaster for the criminal justice system of the United States. I heard you saying that. I completely agree. This is the worst possible outcome because, of course, now every conceivable theory that you can imagine is going to be spiraling out, and where we ought to have had certainty, confidence about where this was all going, which, let's also be straightforward, is what not just the public but Epstein's victims deserved. What we now have is chaos, confusion, speculation, and worst of all, mystery, and lots of unanswered questions.
I would throw in despair.
Despair. A perfect storm. Your words describes it exactly. It's the worst possible outcome. Even if we do move forward with trials, as I think we will, it will be a case of Hamlet without the prince. It will be a very, very strange.
Well put.
Case from this point on.
A couple of tweets, guys. One from Yasher Ali, which just came through. And the tweet is, to die by suicide in federal prison, particularly after he attempted it once before, is a massive scandal. That is right. This is his second attempt at suicide. And from Scott Heckinger, I am not into conspiracy theories, but Epstein had destructive information on an extraordinary number of extraordinarily powerful people. It is not easy to commit suicide in prison, especially after being placed on suicide watch, especially after already allegedly trying. Peter, yes. Alexander, what do you make of those two?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's a very good analysis right there. And this is what we're echoing here right now. Everything we said is reasonable. Okay, we have reasonable questions. Go ahead, Alex.
It's a spot-on analysis, Peter. And I come back to what I'm saying. I mean, there may be lots of people on suicide watch, but not all of them are Jeffrey Epstein. In this case, more than almost any other, you would want special precautions to be taken to make sure that this case was brought to a proper, satisfactory, and definitive conclusion. You would have thought that this person, more than almost anyone else, would be observed and observed properly. Carry on.
Okay, observe. That's the key word right here. Yeah. Alexander Christopher just said it in passing, but it seems to me logically dictate. I don't know for sure. I don't work in a prison. Thank goodness, never been there in one. But I mean, you would have had a camera on him the whole time. If you're in a federal prison on suicide watch, you would have a camera on. So they have the footage. Yeah. If he indeed committed suicide, they have the forensic evidence that he did. Are we going to see that?
They just turned this into the biggest story of the year. What do you think, Peter? What do you think, Alexander? I mean,
I think a lot of people are going to want.
But now I think it's going to be huge.
I remember Patrick Armstrong, one of our favorites. He's one of the best analysts on Russia and in Ukraine. And he said, it's the biggest story in the world until it's not. And I think, well, look at the boys over at Facebook when they wanted to have this new deal about, selling licenses to the major news agencies, basically crowd everyone else out. No, I think they'll get a story. And then and if there's nothing that sticks to Trump, I think, well, that's a story that will just leave the news cycle. It won't for a lot of people, but don't expect the mainstream media to keep an eye on it, except for maybe that newspaper in Miami, the Herald, I think it is, which has done excellent stuff. I think that, as someone pointed out, and I think the last time we were doing this, is that why hasn't Hollywood said anything about this? Okay, I think a lot of people want to see this story go away. A lot of people.
In on it.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that, but I think the logic would dictate. I mean, these people are the flag bearers of the Me Too movement, and then when it comes to Epstein, it's crickets. Okay,
Yes.
crickets.
I think we said this on Crosstalk, Peter. The Me Too movement was controlled. Weinstein was
Controlled burn.
It was a controlled burn. Everything was staged and controlled. The entire hashtag Me Too was generated by a PR firm in LA. I believe in LA or a New York PR firm. I believe it's called CA or CR. And they generated the entire Me Too hashtag movement. It was controlled burn. This, and I think we said it on that Crosstalk, Peter. Our viewers should go back and check that Crosstalk out. This was not controlled at all.
No.
This kind of, came out of left field, came out of nowhere.
Yes.
And the fact, and I think that makes perfectly reasonable sense, because then if Epstein had any kind of inkling of something that the walls were closing in, he never would have flown back to the United States.
Exactly. He would have stayed in France, wherever he was, and that would have been that. And who knows? He had that expired fake identity Saudi passport. What other passports did he have?
Yeah.
Okay, he could have just disappeared. Yeah, he could. Yeah. Well, I wonder if we'll ever find out who he really was, how he really made his money. Okay, and who gave him money.
Yeah. Well, Alexander, people in the chat are. It's going. Everyone is very upset, rightly so.
Well, absolutely. And so there should be, and can I just say, if Peter is right, and I think he may very well be, that there will be an attempt to close down public discussion of this case as far as possible. It's never been very widely reported here in Britain, by the way, which is quite interesting. It's been sort of downplayed until today, when it's almost today's the first day when
because he's dead.
Yeah, he's dead. It's the first day, then it's the top story. But if that does happen, I predict that you're going to get a huge cottage industry of books and articles and things going on for years and years.
It's a conspiracy theorist dream come true.
Absolutely. Which is why, actually, the establishment, in its own interest, should actually be trying to get to the bottom of all of this. But who knows? Maybe they won't.
because they're spineless. They're spineless. They won't. They won't.
Yes.
Or what they'll do is just lead you down another path, another rabbit hole. Okay.
Yes.
Don't have any faith in the mainstream media.
No, I have none, Peter.
Zero.
I stopped having any of that years ago. But no, people are right to be upset, and they're right to be angry, and they're right to ask lots and lots of questions. I want to make it very clear. I'm not providing any answers. We've only got questions. We don't have answers at the moment. We've got to be very clear about this, about what happened today. But as I said, I do still hope. Maybe it's more hope, based more on hope than experience, that this is not the end of the investigation. Because, as I said, there are lots of other people involved. There are lots of other people who could potentially be charged. We could move forward with all of these things. And as I said, from a legal perspective, it might actually make it easier with Epstein himself out of the way. But it won't have the drama that he did.
It won't. Yes. That's it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. It won't have the same pizzazz and the ghoulishness and all of that. Yes. Even though if it is true, these allegations that crimes committed against these young women, for me, that's the tragedy of this whole story. The rich and the famous, they get away with so much. And these these alleged victims, they were so close, and and that's the great loss right now, because will they ever get closure? The people around him are hoping they got that at the 7th hour in the morning in New York. But there's a lot of people that are going to pop a bottle of champagne tonight. I'm sorry to say that, but I think it's true.
Absolutely. I'm afraid that's right. The other thing I must say is that, again, I mean, logically, there should be a massive inquiry and investigation into what happened, how it came about that he died in whatever way he did. We should have full transparency about that, and somebody ought to be punished.
Can I ask you guys a question, playing, assuming that he did commit suicide?
Yes.
Let's say the story is correct. He did commit suicide in his prison cell, and the guards and the cameras didn't capture anything. He just managed to hang himself, as they say. They say they found bruises around his neck so far. That's what the reports say.
Yes.
Alexander, Peter, what would be the motives for Epstein to kill himself?
Oh, I think this is actually very standard in these kind of cases. I mean, his world has imploded. He's now a
but he pleaded not guilty, Alexander.
Oh, I know, but he
yeah, but I mean, no, but Alexander McCurry's
lawyers around him. I mean, it wasn't.
Well, maybe that wasn't going to be the answer, because I think also remember, let's think of the timeline here. Now, Alexander McCurry and Alexander Christopher, you guys did an excellent video on the double jeopardy issue, and that very much was in play, and that's why you need an all-star team. But what happened after Epstein was arrested? They raided his property in New York, and they left with a cache of tapes, of video, who knows what else. And they made it pretty clear that there was enormous incriminating evidence, images and video. That was enough. That's enough to put him away. That's more than enough to put him away.
I'm inclined to agree. I mean, I think we said actually in that video that I don't actually think that the double jeopardy defense would stick. But irrespective of that, I mean, this is a man who's been living a kind of double life for much of his life, and now it's all exposed to the public. He's not going to be able to live the kind of life. He wouldn't have been able to live the kind of life that he had. He's been exposed as a monster. People like that, I mean, often they give up hope and they kill themselves. I mean, I don't find that surprising in itself. What is astonishing is that he was able to do it. I mean, that is astonishing and very, very concerning indeed. I mean,
well, unless I'm sorry, I don't want to go down, this rabbit hole, unless somebody helps.
Well, yeah.
The thing is, Alexander, you said that he was, branded a monster. But okay, there's, everyone that's watching us right now, and the videos that we did, and a lot of the alternative media, they've been covering this.
Yes.
And there's been a lot of people who have been very keen as to what's going on in this Epstein saga. But the mainstream media, they didn't cover this much at all. No one really branded him a monster.
Nope.
And I would venture to say a lot of people probably have no idea what's going on with Epstein or who Epstein even is. A lot of just, everyday people going about their lives.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't like Harvey Weinstein. Okay, Weinstein, I could see he was branded a monster because it was wall-to-wall coverage. But Epstein really didn't get any coverage unless you really wanted to look.
Because it was inconvenient, okay? And I think a lot of people were afraid that what might come out, all right? What might come out. And I think that would kind of spook people. I mean, look at the people. I mean, this what I'm about to say is a fact. I mean, he did hobnob with some amazingly well-connected, powerful, and rich people. No one denies that, okay? That's not denied. I mean, even if they went, what was it? Stephen Hawkins, I mean, the great astrophysicist. I mean, even he visited the island. Okay, I don't think he did anything nefarious, but he was hanging out with some of the most important people. I think a lot of people felt, even if they didn't do anything wrong, they would get pulled into this vortex. You visited that island. You were on that airplane. You met him for lunch. You had dinner with him. You took his money. I mean, do you think Harvard University is wanted to see justice prevail here? They even said they wouldn't give the money back that Epstein gave them. There's a lot of people that just didn't want this story to get traction. It only got traction on social media, as far as I can see, and a few news outlets. Okay, I mean, that Miami newspaper that did all the hard, hard work with the detectives and police. All right, so there's a lot of reasons why I think people in the elites want this story to go away.
I agree. But I mean, if I could just come back to Epstein himself, I mean, it may not have been given as much publicity in mainstream media as it should have been, or in fact might have been given very little publicity. But amongst the people that Epstein himself knew, he is completely exposed. He's not just exposed as the monster that he was, but he's also exposed as a powerless man, a person who's thrown into prison, who's been brought down low. It's always very difficult to say what tips someone over the edge, but it's not impossible. In fact, it's highly likely that a person like this would be tipped over the edge and would do something like
I agree with that completely. But going back
Yes,
to the media
yes,
coverage of it, I
yes.
think is really important.
Yes.
Is that I think if you look at the tensions that are going on in the United States, the political left always wants to say it's racism, it's racism. No, it's really I'm a conservative. Everyone knows that this is a class issue. Do you think the elites want another reason for the middle class, the suffering middle class? Do you think the elites want to have one of their own exposed? No, they don't. There's already enough tensions right now going on in the American body politic. And this would just be another example of varsity blues where people in power get away with it. Do you think the elites want to expose one of their own, even if they find him odious? I don't think so at all. And I think that's what that has driven the media coverage of this story. Sure, over the next 2 news cycles, he's dead, okay? And then by Monday, Tuesday, it will be business as usual. And then you'll have, as Alexander McGarris already pointed out, there'll be a cottage industry, and what the hell happened? Mark my words.
And then if you try to dig into it, you're going to be branded a conspiracy theorist.
Well, yes. they know, and Facebook knows who a conspiracy theorist is, apparently. Okay?
Absolutely.
So everyone's in on this. Everyone's in on this.
Look, I did a program on is Donald Trump a racist? Okay, on Crosstalk. YouTube plummeted me. I mean, they whacked me. Okay, you know why? Because I went after Al Sharpton. Okay, that's why. Okay, and I asked my guest: does he traffic in racism? Is he a race merchant? And I'll tell you, my numbers got slashed because I said something that I believe is true. All right, so don't expect too many numbers here.
We'll see what we'll see what YouTube does to this live stream.
Yes.
So anyway, guys, let's get to some. We have a lot of super chats. So let's get to those. Let's start off with Sparky. When I was in the Army, if someone was on suicide watch, especially if pending arrest, someone would be standing and looking at them in person 24/7. Any comments on that, guys?
Well, yes. I mean, I come back to what I'm saying. I mean, we're not just talking about lots of people are sent to prison and they are suicidal and they're put on suicide watch. This is perhaps the single most high-profile suspect in the United States on suicide watch in a case involving some, allegations against some of the most powerful people in the country. You would have thought that there would be particular precautions taken to ensure that a person like that didn't commit suicide. There are so many unanswered questions here. I don't have the answers to those questions. I will be very interested to see what kind of answers are produced and how convincing those answers are. But I mean, the point that this questioner has made, entirely valid.
All right, from Jane Reynolds, super chat, DS at their finest, deep state at their finest. Guys think this is a deep state operation?
Well, depending on what the explanation is going to be, so we'll be on air again real soon, I think, because I want to know what their story is here.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of like, mafia hits, The dirty cops say, well, he shot himself in the back of the head. Case closed. Okay. Or he shot himself in the back of the head twice. Case closed. I want to know the explanation because, well, the FBI, they screwed up the Russiagate hoax so badly because they were incompetent. Okay. They were simply incompetent. What's going to be the competence ratio this time?
Yeah.
I really would like to know. And if they better have a good story, or else the esteem people have of law enforcement is going to plummet even further. And you know, gents, it's not very high right now.
No.
All right, from Paul Carden, Super Chat. WikiLeaks should push for no extradition, citing Assange's high profile and the raised risk.
Well, can I just say? I mean, it's been discussed already. I mean, in Assange's case, that, as I said, U.S. prisons are not safe places.
Yeah. From Sparky, Super Chat. Corpse is a doppelganger, maybe. There's
like
another.
Like I said, we've been saying repeatedly here, we need more evidence. Okay, we need more evidence. I don't take their word for it. Sorry, why should I?
Nothing's going to be believed. A lot of people are tweeting saying that Epstein's on a plane, getting out.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I presume we will get an autopsy report and we'll get all kinds of things coming out. Let's wait and see. I mean, I'm not going to rush into any kind of speculation along those lines.
And still, people, Alexander, are not going to believe it. That's the
absolutely.
problem.
Well, this is the problem.
This is the dilemma the authorities have created for themselves.
Absolutely.
Not us.
No.
They've created this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because the fundamental question is right now, why should we believe you? Give me one good reason. I'm sorry, that's a legitimate thing to say.
Yes.
Hoax after hoax, lie after lie, from WMD to Syria to Libya to Russiagate. Skripal, it's lie after lie after lie. I mean, it is just so tired of it.
Well, I think people are, because I mean, we're talking about conspiracy theories, and of course, Russiagate was this gigantic conspiracy theory.
Huge.
And the United States intelligence and security services spend all this time investigating that conspiracy theory, and they can't ensure the life of one prisoner.
Very well said.
Very, very good.
Very well said.
All right, Super Chat from Sparky. What about Epstein's secret stash of evidence that he likely had as bargaining chips for a country club prison? Now we'll never find it.
Well, I come back to what I'm saying. I mean, if we're talking about documentation, I mean, documents, there's a wonderful expression from a Russian novel, books don't burn. Perhaps those documents are still around. And as I said, let's not despair of the prospect of criminal investigations and criminal cases being taken forward. Maybe they will be found, maybe they will be used. At this moment in time, we don't know. But what we have now lost is Epstein going into the witness box and giving his own account of what happened. And I am pretty sure, in fact, I'm absolutely sure that many, many people around the world, not just in the United States, are very relieved that Epstein is not going to go into that witness box. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen Epstein on TV or give an interview or speak?
No, I've never heard him speak. It's most bizarre.
Out of curiosity, has
that very weird kind of expression he has.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
like his puckered lips or something, like real smug looking, but I don't know if maybe that was just used for effect.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, I
was
think,
just curious.
I've just seen. I think I don't work overtime on this case here because I find it just really repugnant, and I look at it as an elite problem. But no, I've never seen an interview with him.
Well, I mean, there's so many unanswered questions about Epstein. I mean, for example, how did he acquire his money? How did he acquire this extraordinary palace in New York that he owned?
That apparently there's no paperwork that he actually bought it.
Well, exactly.
And he sold the plane. He sold one of these. So supposedly he had two planes, but he sold the main one. He sold it right before all of this went down.
Exactly.
And I bet that was evidence cleaned.
Yeah. Very interesting. From Angry Shamrock Super Chat, they say he was taken off suicide watch. I haven't heard anything about that. Maybe. But,
well, if he was, can I just say that was also grossly negligent, because a person in his situation is an obvious suicide risk, especially if he's already tried it, or, as has been also suggested, he was assaulted. I mean, somebody like that, I come back to saying this, he was the single most prominent prisoner in the American penal system.
Oh, exactly. Any profiler would have said, this guy is on, you have absolutely mandatory to have him on suicide watch. Absolutely mandatory. Just for the very reasons that Alexander McCurris enumerated on, okay? I mean, absolutely. So I haven't heard that. I know that he was at one time, but that would be just such a dereliction of duty to revoke that unless you wanted him to do it. Again, I asked the fundamental question: who benefits from this?
Yes.
Alexander, can I ask you a question? Valley S Super Chat, $20. Thank you, Valley, for that Super Chat. Alexander, how powerful is Prince Andrew?
Oh, well, politically not at all.
Because I don't know much about him, that's why.
He is, members of the royal family have no significant power in Britain. They have a certain social pull, but they are not politically powerful in any important sense. The Queen does have power. I mean, the Queen has political power, which is becoming increasingly important now with the brewing constitutional crisis that we have over Brexit. Prince Charles, the heir to the throne, has power. Prince Andrew has no power at all. But that doesn't mean that he's not an important person. Many people are important, but they don't have political power.
He doesn't have political power. He has status, but he doesn't have political power.
Exactly.
Okay. From Sparky Super Chat, no live defendant equals much less public interest.
Well, yes, except of course that, as I said, there's going to be vast amount of interest in how he came to die. And a lot of people are going to be asking those questions. But yes, I mean, Peter said it, I said it. I mean, it's, as I said, it's going to be the drama without the lead actor. You know, the film, the big film without the A movie star. It's going to be
it's like House of Cards. When Frank left, the whole series felt like a House of Cards.
That's exactly.
Did you see the last season? It was awful. It was simply awful. Because the main character was gone.
Super Chat, Peter Arkanside, add a notch in the Clinton body count.
No, come on. We're not going there. We're not going there. Okay. We may, I think we would all like to know because of the allegations, and I think obviously partisan in the media, did Bill Clinton do anything wrong? And I think that because he's a public figure, I think we have a right to know. But we're not going down that path, okay? Because there's nothing to give it. There's no evidence of it, okay? And if in fact Epstein is dead, we need to find out how he died. And again, I'll ask it maybe for the 15th time. I mean, who benefits? Okay, that's how I would answer that question.
All right, Super Chat from Carl Badsdorf. No question, just a Super Chat. Thank you for that. Super Chat from Sparky. Epstein was obsessed with preserving his life and DNA. This is true.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. That farm or stud farm or whatever. I guess that's kind of a Freudian slip. I mean, he talked to some very well-known geneticists and scientists, and trying to, I guess, preserve in perpetuity his genetic code. Apparently, he wanted to have artificially inseminate dozens and dozens of women with his seed. And I don't think any of them really took it took serious interest in it. But this has been reported. This is public information. Yeah, he apparently wanted to have his penis and his brain frozen also after his death. Okay, for what reasons, I don't know. But that was reported as well. Yeah. He was a very weird guy. And his taste in art was pretty weird too, from what we've been told.
As multiple.
Well, okay, that's an interesting dot to connect right there.
People in the chat, if you do a Google search and you see Tony Podesta, as well as John, but Tony Podesta was a big collector of art, and he has some very disturbing pieces that he collects. I mean, really, there is a satanic. stuff.
We don't want to go there.
We don't want to go there, but
no, because
it's an interesting.
Yeah, but
look
it just shows the degradation, how society is just completely morally collapsed, and it starts with the elites. Okay, it really does. I mean, this type of behavior. I mean, I brought up varsity blues. I mean, these are people believe they're above the law, and they get such a free pass from their peers in power, and this is just, and I think that's why this story is interesting to me. Not all of the ghoulish details. I think it's so disgusting, but how did people of this stature get a free pass for so long? Okay, because it didn't happen in isolation. This didn't happen in a vacuum. Okay, and that lifestyle took a lot of money to maintain. Okay, and we'll ask again, how in the world does this guy make his money? No, we don't know.
We don't.
All right. Good super chat, Sparky. Thank you for that. And we have a super chat from Jane Reynolds. Alexander, we did a very in-depth video on this. Miss Maxwell to be pursued.
Well, possibly.
Maxwell's. You know, Maxwell and the father also had a very controversial death on his yacht.
He had an extraordinary death, and we discussed that very, very much in the video. I mean, I personally think that was a suicide, but there are lots and lots and lots of rumors that it was actually an arranged murder, that he was killed by Mossad or the KGB or all sorts of people. I think it was a suicide, but certainly a mysterious death. Now, I want to say something about Ghislaine Maxwell, which is that she is not so far being charged with anything. There are lots of allegations going around about her. We will see in time whether anything comes of those. But until it does, she is innocent until proved guilty. And I think that's an important thing to stress.
I think it's, in her case, it's very interesting, is that I wonder, before Epstein's death, how she was going to play into the prosecution. Because once they made their initial charges and started producing evidence, I think what they wanted to do is approach Maxwell and say, can you spell immunity? I mean, come on, corroborate all of this. How that's going to play into this now, I don't know. Well, all right, because without the main player, her lawyers are going to be thinking, can they go through the long game and gamble that she'll free herself of this, or juxtaposition on the other side, maybe she will become the focus of this, because she knew, quote unquote, what she knew. We don't know. There are allegations, but it'll be very interesting, her role in all of this as it moves forward.
Yes.
All right. From XX Oron, super chat, $20. Thanks for keeping us informed, guys. Peter, thank you so much for taking the time off from your vacation to come on. And Alexander, nice haircut.
My wife's work, by the way, she does that. She cuts my hair for me, but there we go.
All right. A super chat from Sparky. Just a bureaucratic mix-up. Nothing to see here.
Okay, that variant won't work with me. Okay, sorry.
And another super chat from Sparky. Establishment doesn't care how obvious. It's shameless. That's an interesting super chat, because I'll expand that a little. It seems that they're getting, if it is, let's go down the rabbit hole a little and say this is a hoax. It wasn't a suicide, or it was something else. It's pretty bold if that is the case, is it not?
Well, I would say actually it would be reckless, in fact. I mean, if they are really reaching the point of taking those kind of risks, then, as I said, we are in a very, very interesting situation in the world. I mean, if I may say so, if you look at the period just before the French Revolution, all kinds of extraordinary things were happening in pre-revolutionary France by an establishment that was becoming increasingly reckless, and we all know how that ended. So I don't want to, as I say, go too far down this particular rabbit hole at the moment, because we don't know. Like I stress again, we don't have enough information at the moment. But as I said, I wouldn't call it bold. I would call it reckless and taking people for fools, which is a very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, but Alexander McCurris is absolutely right. I mean, if you look at this ridiculous Russia hoax conspiracy, there were people that a process crime lied to the FBI and are paying a huge price. And now we're learning that so many people at Main Justice were lacking candor, but are they moving charges against them? I mean, this is just another classic example of a dual justice system, and this is going to infuriate people. It really will. So, whatever the explanation is on Monday morning, it better be a good one. It better be.
All right,
because this story will become much bigger in a different way.
Yes,
exactly. Good point. Super chat from Lord Brett Sinclair. Where is Ghislaine Maxwell?
Goodness knows. I presume somewhere in the United States.
She's incommunicado. That's what I understand. Yeah.
All right. From Sparky, how many suicides while on suicide watch? Stats.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't say.
I don't think a whole lot, to be honest with you.
No.
Yeah. From Jane Reynolds, a super chat, prelude to a false flag, ?
Well, we again, no reason. We just don't have an answer to that.
Again, I think what serious people are going to be doing now, depending on what the official reaction, how this fatality happened, if in fact it did. Again, after the explanation, then the question becomes even more germane: who benefits? Okay, we have to know more about what the official story is going to be.
Yes,
and I'll tell you, the history of official stories is pretty lame as of late. Okay.
I mean, can I actually, because we were talking about Maxwell and Robert Maxwell and his death. I mean, the interesting thing about that particular case was that it was his death, whether it was a suicide or a murder or whatever it was. I think it was a suicide, that actually triggered the real start of the investigation of Robert Maxwell's activities. And it's just possible the same may be true in the Jeffrey Epstein case, that this will actually act as a sort of galvanizer. It will make people in America so angry that it might actually push things forward, and we could see this investigation taken further than it has been.
It depends.
We mustn't discuss.
No. But it depends on how the message is managed. It gets down to how the message is managed.
Exactly.
I don't preclude what you're saying will happen, but it depends on the messaging.
Yeah.
Super chat from Sparky, all to provide globalist elites a limited hangout. Well, yeah. From another super chat from Sparky, accidentally cremated, paperwork mix-up. I mean, you did have that with Osama bin Laden, didn't you? Like, his ashes were thrown to sea. Is that correct? Or
well, again,
his body was apparently his body. Yes. They performed the Muslim ceremony on the aircraft carrier or battleship, and they disposed of the body.
Okay.
Which we never saw.
Which we never saw, and has also resulted in all kinds of stories and rumors about what actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, apparently in the compound in Pakistan, where he was hiding in plain sight, and it was all filmed. All the soldiers had camera gear and all of that, and they, as deplorable bin Laden was, but apparently they just shot up an old man. Okay, didn't have any interest in taking him in, did they?
No.
They had all the firepower they needed to defeat an old man surrounded by women, but it didn't happen that way, did it? Okay, and so there's skepticism there. You don't show the forensic evidence. There's no reason for me to believe you. Okay, at all. The INF treaty, the U.S. walked away from it, even after the Russians invited an American delegation to view for themselves the problem weapon that they were all in an uproar about, and the Americans refused. Okay, they refused to do it. Okay, they didn't want to go the extra mile. Okay, depends how you manage the message. Okay, that one was managed very badly, and as a result, there's more distrust. We could go on for hours about these kinds of stories.
Yeah.
Remember the photo, guys, after they got bin Laden of Obama and his staff and Clinton? They're all sitting there.
Yeah, he was the most insignificant. He was the most insignificant person in the room. If you look at the photo carefully, he was almost like a footnote in his own administration. It was a weird picture.
Yeah. Absolutely. From Sparky, another super chat. Epstein donated to all kinds of life-extending sciences, like cryonics, cryonics and DNA studies, so it doesn't seem like suicide would interest him, ?
Well, that is debatable. You see, suicide.
Or just the reverse, his DNA is preserved, okay?
Well, indeed, exactly. I mean, the other thing is it does suggest, I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I don't want to go down the world of the psychiatric, rabbit hole, but it suggests a very narcissistic personality. And people like that are actually quite high suicide risks, apparently. I am not an expert in this field, and I don't want to really go.
But apparently he's a quite shallow person.
Yeah.
Because, again, we go back to these scientists that he was trying to entice to get involved in these programs, genetic programs, preserving his genetic code. And witnesses have attested that when a really smart person that knew what they're talking about confronted him or challenged him, he would act like a juvenile. So, a person that is very self-absorbed. Okay. Yes. And if your whole life, I mean, again, I don't stay away from these lurid details, but some accounts he had, 3 girls come into him a day. Okay. And have that suddenly all taken away from you and exposed, at least through allegations. I mean, Alexander Mercouris is right. I mean, his life, the way he saw it, was over.
Yeah. I mean, Peter, you got him exactly right when you called him a very weird guy. And it's very difficult for people who are not weird to try and enter into the mind of such a person. So let's not go there.
Okay, from Sparky Super Chat, many awful perpetrators don't commit suicide.
Very true. Very true.
But it's hard to know.
It's hard to know, exactly. I mean,
yeah, but again, we're not psychologists here.
No.
The psychopaths think they're superhuman, that they're so special that that the suicide is the last thing they would think of. But we are not psychologists or psychiatrists here. I don't know. We've never talked to him, and obviously never examined him because we don't have that qualification. But I think this underscores a very important point. We don't know who he was.
No. I mean, that's actually a very important point, because the strange thing about Epstein is that in some respects, he's a very public man, and simultaneously he was a very secret man. Yeah. And this is a very, very strange thing in itself, and not something that's very easy to make much sense of. As I said, a very weird guy, as Peter said, and one with lots of mysteries and lots of unanswered questions. And perhaps we will get some answers, but it's unlikely we now will, because, as I said, he's dead.
Yep. This one goes into the moon landing and Elvis category.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just makes you think that the powers that be are just really screwing with our heads, doesn't it?
Depends on what their message is going to be, because we're going to be sitting here talking about it again. I think relatively soon.
I think Peter, that is one of your most accurate prophecies.
Okay, from Sparky Super Chat, are the globalists sending a signal to Assange?
Oh no, I don't think so. I mean, Assange is in no position to receive signals at the moment. What I've heard about him, and John Pilger's written a piece about him recently. I mean, he's completely isolated. He's heavily drugged, apparently.
Very poor health.
Very poor health. So he's not in a position to receive signals about what's happening to someone like Epstein. I don't doubt that he's very interested in Epstein. He's got so many of his own problems to worry about.
It seems to me the authorities want him to die of a natural cause in prison.
The one thing I will say, and I've heard this from several people who have had some kind of contacts, or at least, if not direct contact with Assange, contacts with people who've had direct contact with Assange. He is still fighting. I mean, he's not given up, however ill and drugged he is. So we're talking about such radically different scenarios that I don't really think this is a message, actually. I don't think we should see it in those terms.
All right, super chat from Nigel. Does Alexander and Peter think there's possibly Ghislaine Maxwell will be investigated? Was she close enough to reveal the scope of crimes and people involved?
I have no doubt that she is
I
being
agree.
investigated. I have no doubt whatsoever.
I agree.
Where those investigations will lead to, that I'm not in a position to answer. All I will say is there are some extraordinary and very, very damaging stories about Ghislaine Maxwell out in the media. And if even a fraction of those stories is true, then she has some very serious questions to answer.
And she was
That's
close.
why it's, yeah, but that's why I said in my previous answer here is that what kind of case was the DA building against Epstein and what was her role in it? Because again, I'd like to stress that, if they had enough evidence, corroborating evidence with her involvement in these allegations here, they might have given her the opportunity to make a deal to corroborate these stories against him. Now, with the main character out of play, what is her role in this now? Will they turn her into the fall lady? This is what the DA is certainly talking about right now, because they wouldn't have made a case against Epstein unless they felt they had a solid one. And common sense dictates to me that she was an integral part of that case. What is her role in that case now? We don't know.
I mean, Peter, these are very astute and true comments. Mm-hmm.
Alexandra, she has legal representation, I would assume.
Oh, of course she does.
Of course.
Of the highest caliber. Of that, there's no doubt.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Super chat from Asavet MD, $25 super chat. No question. Thank you, Asavet, for that. Super chat from Thad Panic. Can his victims sue his estate?
A very good question. I'm not sure. Possibly is the answer. I mean, it depends. It's not going to be an easy case to bring because, of course, you have to prove loss. I mean, this is quite apart from anything else, but you have to prove a causation and loss. Very difficult to prove that when the person himself is dead. I mean, how do you build a civil case here? But, let's not discount that possibility. It's certainly a real possibility.
And we have to find out what kind of forensic evidence the authorities have. Again, I go back to the search of his estate. Apparently, they found quite a bit. We'll see what it is. I mean, they were quite gleeful leaving that property that day. Okay.
Yes.
And again, I'd like to stress, I mean, if we believe the news accounts, there was a lot of what appeared to be child pornography or underage pornography, and that's a pretty severe prison sentence if you can prove it. So, I mean, just on that point, and I tend to think that was the point, the tipping point for him. Okay, because he had this litigation earlier and got off easy, but this is new evidence since that time. And who knows, maybe he was in the pictures or something like that. And then he knew it was the end of it. I mean, if he's dead, I believe he committed suicide. The thing is it looks like to me, without further evidence, he was allowed to do it. And I want to know why they allowed him to do it, if that is the case. I keep saying if, whether, because we need more. We need more information.
From Fairbear at the Duran, I came late, but have you discussed the more realistic option of him being alive and in exile? He would have known that he was prepared to ruin what would happen to many if he died.
Well, we have discussed this is the answer. We just have no information to support that theory. I mean, it is only a theory, and it's contradicted by the official version. I mean,
and also, I really like to stress, and when I remember I was at university teaching university undergraduates, a conspiracy, because that would need to be a conspiracy if that were to happen. Not just one person could do it. It would have to be a whole array of people.
Exactly.
When you have a secret, your own secret, and you never tell anyone, the likelihood that you'll get away with that is pretty good. But you bring in a second person, a third person, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and so on. Then it becomes very, very difficult. Okay, that's why conspiracy theories. There are conspiracies out there. Oh, there are. Look at Russiagate. That was one big conspiracy against the Trump campaign and the sitting president. But conspiracies are by their very definition a group of people in collusion, and can you be assured that every single one will keep their mouth shut? The more people there are, the more unlikely it can happen. Okay,
Exactly.
so we have to leave it at there. We need more information about the forensic evidence that is related to what we're told is his suicide.
Yeah.
All right, a comment from the order 1814. At the Duran, I used to work in a secure hospital, and if anyone was suicidal, we put them on double constant observation. 2 people watching the person constantly and within arm's distance.
Thanks to you for telling us, because
Exactly.
that makes perfect sense.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, I mean, we all very, very valuable information, like the one we had from the military person before. I mean, all things we need to know. So many questions about this case. How did it happen? And again, it's the point we've been making repeatedly on this program. This is not just anybody. It's Jeffrey Epstein, the center of, the biggest case, criminal case underway in the United States, and the criminal justice system cannot ensure that this person is kept alive. It seems extraordinary.
It is extraordinary, because I think the last time we talked about this live to our audience, I think I remember mentioning is that this was a case that the authorities were trying to redeem themselves,
Exactly.
to try to show the public that they're doing the right thing. They have a solid case. They're getting a person that is obviously a malignant character in society and needs to be brought to justice. This was a winning hand for them, okay? Mm-hmm. And if they can't explain to us how he committed suicide, then that hope, that effort, that campaign to show to shine a better light on criminal justice, the criminal justice system, then they failed, okay?
Okay, super chat from Let Chat. His victims must be extremely disappointed.
Well, I think there must be great despair, devastated.
Okay, super chat from Sparky. Received Alpha Group mug. Now no one kicks sand in my face and bikini-clad beauties mob me. I now know what it's like to be Alexander McCurse. Thank you, Sparky, for buying that Alpha Group mug. It is a great mug. A beautiful.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
And thank you for your super chats. And another one from Sparky. Globalist establishment is in scorched earth mode. Could be.
Could be.
Well, we'll see when they message us more on what the fate of Epstein was. Again, that's going to be the linchpin for a lot of people. Okay. How the hell did this happen? How?
And the final super chat from Star Trooper. Is there prison camera footage?
Well,
another question.
Well, yes.
And if there is, where is it?
Well, indeed,
or will we have a Rosemary Woods incident? That's a trivia point. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, Peter. You're talking about, was it the 18-minute gap and all that? Yep. Perhaps you can explain.
No, this is one of the great mysteries of the Watergate saga, is that Rosemary Woods was Richard Nixon's personal secretary. And when she was taking diction, from a recording, she was writing out the transcript. And apparently she accidentally hit the wrong, because the pedals were on the ground, and she accidentally hit the pedal and it erased 18 minutes. And it's always been a mystery what was there. And how in the world could she possibly, because physically it was probably almost impossible that she could have done that where she was sitting. I think Rosemary Woods has passed away and they never charged her, but there was a gap, okay? A gap, okay? So I guess the Russians did it. Okay? They hacked the prison. Somebody will say it the next 24 hours. Believe me, someone will.
Absolutely.
All right, we just got one more super chat from Thad Panic. You think Ghislaine is next to get arrested? A lot of people are talking about her right now in the chat as well.
Yeah, and they're right to.
In line.
They're right to, because, as I said, she's the person who gets mentioned and named all the time. The short answer to the question is we don't know. But she is the person that people are talking about, because she is the person people have been writing about and have been saying things about.
And as we speak, she's the linchpin of this whole thing right now.
Exactly.
From Gobaral at the Duran, tell us when you will be hosting the next streaming chat, please. Monday or Wednesday. We'll talk about it after this live stream, and we'll most likely do it either Monday or Wednesday. We'll announce it ahead of time. Now that we got this software up and running, that Hangouts has been discontinued, and we have Zoom up and running. Yeah. And I think it came out pretty well. I mean,
yes, it did.
It looks good. The sound is good.
Well, I had a few problems at the beginning, but I think we've sorted it out.
No, we sorted it out.
Yeah.
So, all right, we've got all the super chats covered. We had a good hour plus talking about this astonishing news. Not a surprise, but still a surprise, it seems.
The biggest surprise that was most expected.
There you go. The biggest surprise.
Very good. The most expected, yeah.
There you go. And on that note, we will leave it. We'll end this live stream. Breaking news. As we can say right now, Jeffrey Epstein is dead, as far as we know. And as far as we know, the reports are that he committed suicide in his Manhattan jail cell. That is all we know right now. We will keep you guys posted on this story. We have in Moscow, the host of RT's Crosstalk, the one and only Mr. Peter Lavelle.
On vacation.
On vacation. All right. Any other stories that you're following, Peter? Just out of curiosity.
Oh yeah, a whole lot of things, and we need to do a separate chat. I think we need to talk about the world becoming unhinged. We need to talk about Kashmir. We need to talk about the trade, the American-Chinese trade war. The fake story that Russia is going to have a base in Iran. Completely fake story. The nobody that became the American representative to the United Nations. I want to talk about that. I don't even know her name. Such a nobody. Okay. Yeah. So under John Bolton's thumb. Of course, we'll get to watch the traveling circus called the Democratic Caucus going into the campaign. It's pathetic. I think Melania is choosing how to refurbish the Oval Office already, because I think she has good reason to be thinking in those terms right now.
All right, Sparky sent us another super chat. Another Skripal poisoning, more sanctions.
Yeah. They'll find another way to sanction Russia, and they'll find another way. Okay.
I know. But can I just say, Russia's credit rating has been upgraded again, and it's now back where it was before the sanctions were imposed.
All right, and Alexander.
Thank you for those sanctions. We needed them. Keep them on.
That's a video that we'll do that we've got lined up is on the Russian economy. Sparky was on fire today. Thank you for your super chat, Sparky. Yeah. That was a good last one to close out this live stream. We have in London, the Oracle of London, Mr. Alexander McCurse. Alexander, what are you watching?
Outside of Epstein. All the stories that Peter said, also a few ones closer to home. I mean, in Britain, obviously, we have a very complicated situation now. With Brexit, Peter is letting off a groan, but it's getting very interesting. And we're looking at a major constitutional crisis and a possible election and all sorts of very intricate things which really need to be broken down and discussed in great detail. There's also a crisis in Italy, where it looks like the government is about to fall, and with a high probability that Salvini will sweep to power at the head of the Northern League. So we'll have perhaps the strongest anti-Europe government within the EU that we've had up to now. And we're looking at a brewing crisis in Germany, where the economy is slipping into recession. Yep. The AfD looks like they're going to sweep the board in the eastern states, and the wheels are increasingly coming off, or so it looks. So lots going on. It's just what Peter said. This is actually a very, very, very busy news. So
I predict, the acronym FUBAR, fucked up beyond all recognition. Why did they say FUBAR during the Second World War? Well, military personnel were not allowed to swear over the radio, so they came up with their acronyms. Okay, why am I mentioning FUBAR right now? Because FUBAR, move over. The new one is Brexit. This is look at this Brexit situation you've gotten us into, okay? It's his fault. He Brexited, okay? It's another Brexit problem. Mark my words, it will go down in history as a screw up, okay? On that note, I will continue my vacation.
All right, and Jedi Mind said, wish you 1 million subs by next year. Jedi Mind and everyone watching this chat, please share the channel with everybody you know outside of YouTube as well. Minds, Gab, we're on BitChute, Facebook, Twitter. Just share the channel and get the word out about the Duran. And of course, Duran Shop. You can pick up mugs, T-shirts, all kinds of great merchandise, ebooks. Here's my double.
Double book, yes. I haven't got mine here, by the way. It's upstairs, but anyway. Never
And
mind.
we have one final super chat from Retro Pirate Truth Seeker. Big thanks for all you do. And I will second that notion. Thank you, Retro Pirate. Big thanks to Alexander Mercuris. Big thanks to Peter Lavelle. And big thanks to all of you guys. Everyone that's donated to us on PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar, that's brought merchandise. Thank you very much. And everyone that's liked this channel, that really helps us out as well. Hitting that like button and sharing the channel with everybody you know. All right, guys, let's get back to our Saturday. To this incredible news. I wish you guys a really good weekend, and we will see you soon for another live stream.
Yes.
Take care, everybody.
Okay.